I don't know if this could work, or what if XYZ things go wrong?
Mhm.
And instead of staying stuck in that place, the unlock is challenge that and ask yourself the opposite. What if it works out swimmingly?
I'm Gloria Julian, life and career coach and your overthinking expert. And this is Your Life Unbounded, where we get into the mind of an overthinker who has learned to commit to a direction with evidence that they could trust and finally take the first step to making their new lives happen. My next guest is an executive coach, podcast host, and creator of Breaking Free from the Grind, a 12-week one-on-one executive coaching program for the mid and senior level professional working in demanding corporate careers to help them accelerate in their careers without sacrificing their sanity. So she knows a thing or two about staying ambitious without burning out and helping high achievers move forward without losing themselves in the process. Together in this episode, we get into why the messy middle of a career transition can stretch on for years longer than it needs to, how small experiments beat big, overwhelming decisions, and what it actually takes to trust yourself enough to act. Please welcome Amelia Noel.
Hi, Amelia. I'm so happy that you're on this podcast and I appreciate your times. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's so fun to be here, Gloria. I know we did an episode together, Breaking Free from the Grind, my podcast, a few months ago to kick off this year. I think it was the first one of 2026. And it's so
Yeah.
nice to be on here supporting you and having a conversation about all things career related. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so happy that you're here because, you talk about people who are trying to break from the overworking and the mess of corporate life and how, you're kind of striving for that sense of productivity as if it's going to give you some reward at some point in your career. And I just want to talk to you about first ask you, how did you get into this space of coaching at all? Like, tell me what your journey was.
Yeah. So I feel from a career perspective, my journey has sort of been, I don't say all over the place, but in the very best way. Because now looking back on the changes I've made, the industries I've switched to, going from super crazy investment banking and consulting world to being a solopreneur and coach with no entrepreneurial experience, I can really see how every step in my career journey led me to the next place, has served me in what I'm doing right now. And so I actually, ironically, growing up, I was one of those kids, super high achieving, straight A student, top of the class, all the things, felt and put a lot of pressure on myself to feel like I needed to figure everything out and have my life just be, a complete 20-year roadmap with all the details figured. And with that, I also felt that I needed to choose one path and really stick with that path for 30 years of my career. My parents were both school teachers for 30 years. So that was sort of the career trajectory that was modeled to me is like you get in, you work your way up, you work really hard and you stick with this forever. And interestingly, the way things panned out couldn't be further from that. I studied journalism at the University of Missouri, never once became a journalist, went straight into global advertising at Crispin Porter Bogusky at the time was one of the best ad agencies based in Colorado, did crazy advertising life, making Microsoft's campaigns for a couple years before I transitioned into consulting. Did that for almost 7 years, decided I wanted to move across the country to New York City and get my master's at Columbia, my MBA. And then coming out of that, entered the world of investment banking and did that for a couple years before deciding to be a coach. And so even in that, like starting from a journalism to advertising to consulting to business school to banking to being a coach, that might sound to some like this crazy disconnected career trajectory, but it really has been the best thing. And every decision I made along the way, I truly made from a place of what feels most aligned for me right now. So, to go back to your question of transitioning to be a coach, how did I make that? Why did I make that decision? I really realized after about 15 years of operating in very high pressure, very demanding, very long hours, normally working 80 hours a week, that I've always been interested in personal development. When I was in banking, I saw at this like really heightened level the intensity and the intensity of overworking that quite frankly didn't need to be that extreme, and how much additional emotional pain when we are high achievers who are working in any kind of demanding role, the additional emotional and mental pain that we put on ourselves. It's not even put on from us by our job. It's by the voice in our head telling us we need to be perfect. We can't make a mistake. We have to say yes. We can't push back, all of these things, right? And so I'd always been a lifelong fan of personal development. I've always really valued people and human connection. Obviously, investment banking is not really, I mean, there's like the piece where, yes, you're bringing in business and you need to connect with clients, but the human connection, the person to person connection is not the thing that's valued most. And so I just realized that I saw this need in these types of positions, highly demanding, long work hours, pressure to be perfect. And that's beyond finance, consulting, engineering, big tech, corporate law, all the things. And I saw that the personal development industry wasn't speaking to this type of high achieving, like highly demanding personality. And so I realized that I could really bridge that gap. It was working with humans, which is what I loved. It was bridging two worlds I knew very well, personal development and like the crazy corporate rat race. And I really felt certain in myself that this was the aligned next step for me. Doesn't mean it wasn't scary making that position or making that transition, but I really, when I would get quiet and when I would just reflect on what was the best next thing for me, this idea, this thought of like, this is the way you're meant to go kept coming up. And I just thank myself for having the courage and the self-trust and the having of my own back to really trust that voice and follow it.
I love that. That sounded like a quick snapshot of where you came from, who you help, and why it really
Yeah.
matters to you. The thing that stood out to me is actually that 15 years that you mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
So it took you about 15 years to actually go from journalism through this entire journey to coaching now.
Yeah. I think, one of the biggest things, it's not like I was going through those 15 years with this voice in the back of my head saying this is not what you're meant to do. And that's sort of as coaches, what we want to help people avoid is the pain of being in this murky middle limbo undecided territory of like I'm hearing and I don't want to be at the career I'm currently at. Like I can hear that in my head. I feel that, but yet I stay for another 15 years and just spend 15 years in this murky middle. That's a really painful place to be in. I think when
Yeah.
it's come to my career, one thing that I've done well is I've always made quick decisions and listened to that voice. So, for example, when from the time that I first had the thought of like, wow, coaching a high achieving person working in a demanding corporate career and helping them break free from the grind of overworking and stress and helping them figure out what's next. From the time I had that thought to the time I told my bank I was leaving, it was like 3 months. And it really, in that 3 months, it wasn't even me like debating, should I do this? Should I not? It was me getting really clear on how I would do this. So that's something I would really offer to everyone listening today is, the pain and the discomfort and the confusion comes when we're stuck analyzing our situation, such as like I don't know what I want to do. I don't know if this could work, or what if XYZ things go wrong? And instead of staying stuck in that place, the unlock is as quickly as you can, getting yourself thinking and getting yourself to this world of how can this work for me? How could this work for me? How could this be possible? For every what if your brain comes up with, challenge that and ask yourself the opposite. If you're like, what if it doesn't work out? Challenge that thought and ask, what if it works out swimmingly? What if
Mhm.
this move I'm thinking about ends up being a huge success and I end up feeling super fulfilled at work and I end up getting back 20 hours of my week every week to spend with friends, family, myself doing things I love. And then our brain, naturally will think about everything first as a problem. That's just how
Mhm.
we're wired to think, survival mechanism left over from the ice ages, right? But it's really about, it's okay. No, going into thinking through a transition, that your brain is going to think of everything first as a problem. And it's going to identify all of the challenges and have thoughts on all the reasons why the thing isn't going to work. And the secret is not having those doubts. It's hearing those doubts, writing them out so you can just see them outside of yourself and
Like
saying,
that.
okay, how would I solve for this? How can I get around this? Okay, if this worst case terrible thing happened, like, how would I get myself out of this? How would I figure this out? And the faster you can get from the murky middle, from the limbo, from the self-doubt into problem solving mode of like, okay, I'm having these doubts, but I'm actively solving for them.
Yeah.
That's really the unlock that gives you the confidence that helps you create piece by piece the clarity too of, okay, this is a viable option. This
Yeah.
can be a viable option for me.
Yes, absolutely. And the piece I'm hearing is we often get stuck in ruminating, in fantasizing, in dreaming.
Yes.
And there's always that part of you that's like, when I left my job, people were jealous that I was doing entrepreneurship and taking a
Mhm.
chance on myself. And yet,
Yes.
when we're thinking about that 15-year timeline of ruminating about taking this, you do get caught up in just thinking about it over and over and over and like, oh, what can I do? And I really like that you said you need to write it out because
Mhm.
that's exactly what I did. I stopped.
Mhm.
On the other hand, when you're writing it out with purpose. So, like I said, I studied design thinking. It's a process where it starts with empathizing with yourself, but
Yeah.
you empathizing with a goal in mind to actually try to uncover some specific outcome or testing some kind of hypothesis some way. So, when I have my clients, I have them write out everything. I just have them brain dump, right?
Yes.
I don't even have them brained up like I don't tell them, "Hey, just take a week and just write everything down." No, that's not helpful. That's continuing to ruminate about what you're thinking. What I have them do is I have them brain dump in 2 minutes, everything in 2 minutes. And that forces them to stop overthinking about what is
Mhm.
happening in their life. And they're starting to realize, wow, all these things have been top of mind. And I've just been thinking about it over and over and over. And oftentimes they come out with 20 or 30 ideas in just 2 minutes. And it's incredible what your brain just passively keeps thinking about and
Yes.
ruminating on without taking action. So
Yes.
once you're able to see all of that, like that reframe it positively, right? Because I guarantee every time you write it down, it's always things that you feel like are keeping you stuck. They're
Yes,
not things
exactly.
that are going to create forward movement for yourself. And that's why writing down helps it get yourself out of your head and then onto a piece of paper. And my recent client said, wow, this makes it feel real now.
Yes.
Transition feel really real and these problems feel real. And at
Mhm.
that point, you have to decide like, do you want to make it a reality or do
Mhm.
you want to keep
Mhm.
ruminating? Because that's the part where we come in as coaches to help them make it a reality, to help them with that forward movement. So it's to help them reframe all those things that they have just written down in those 2 minutes and make it into a positive spin that helps them take the one next step forward.
Yes. Yeah. And I love what you said because, especially for highly analytical people, overthinkers like ourselves, even, right? It's you need to have an end game for your thoughts.
Mhm.
So it's exactly what you said. The worst thing a highly analytical, overthinking person could do is think about all their doubts. Maybe they even do get to the step of doing a 2-minute brain dump to get them out and then just stopping there and reading them and rereading and like really like getting yourself even deeper into your fears and doubts. You have to have an end game with those thoughts. So it
Okay.
becomes exactly what you said. The most critical step we can take then, if we're overthinkers, if we're highly analytical, is okay, let me at least come up with a strategy to solve for each of these doubts and fears. It doesn't have to be the strategy I end up moving forward with. It doesn't have to be the world's best strategy. I just need to show myself that there is another way, that there is a viable path forward. Because it's just taking yourself from like step 1 to step 2 here, not step 1 to step 10, got it all figured out. Have an end game with your thoughts. Just letting them sit as thoughts will only make you feel more afraid, more confused, more overwhelmed.
Yeah, yeah, totally. And I remember back then, like when I was in my first year of working full time as engineer, I was like, I can't, I'm, my soul is dying right now. I
Yeah.
know there's something else that I need to be doing, and I know it's creative, and I know that I just
Mhm.
need to do something with that. And
Mhm.
so I remember one of my first steps was not to like tell people about all my doubts and everything like that. That came a little bit later. But the
Mhm.
first thing I did was I leaned into one of the hobbies that I had back in college, which was creating greeting cards from scratch. Like I
Oh,
had
that's so
all this
cool.
crafting materials and everything. And the end game that I was really looking for was, do I want to lean into this creativity?
Mhm.
Is this something that really felt like part of my personality that for my 25 years ahead of that, that I never really tapped into? And
Yes.
over time, as I was doing greeting cards, I noticed I started becoming more confident because like I'm literally putting out my creative voice in the world. That's scary. And
Yes.
I'm sure a lot of artists can relate to that.
Mhm.
It's like when you are putting your true personality out in the world. And for me, it felt like 2% of my entire personality at that time. But
Mhm.
that 2% was super scary. But
Yeah.
when I did that 2%, it started to allow me to grow it to like 10% and 15%. And over time, over this 15-year time, growing it little by little, that now today, like I feel like I'm my full personality. And that I feel
Yes.
like has been given me the ability to say, I quit. I'm doing
Mhm.
coaching full time and
Mhm.
like
Yes.
not looking back on it.
Yes, I love what you said about it's this concept of, especially if we're prone to overthinking and overanalyzing, start answering the small questions first. So there
Mhm.
are big questions like, what do I want to do next? And then there are small questions like the one that you answered, which is just like, how do I feel when I'm leaning in to my creative side more? Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, that's a small question that you came up with a plan to answer by leaning in and bringing back this hobby you loved of making homemade greeting cards.
Mm.
And so that's something I would offer is rather than put pressure on yourself to answer the big questions of what do I want to do next or what could be next, come up with these smaller questions. Do I think I'd enjoy being more creative? Do I want to work more directly or less directly with people? And then do activities or do things where you are kind of like mimicking the question
Mhm.
you're asking. So start making greeting cards and just see how you feel being more creative and putting forth that 2% more of your personality. Because the more smaller questions we're able to answer through action, through
Mhm.
doing, experimenting, practicing a hobby, chatting with people more, the more smaller questions that we are able to answer, we start shifting this very defeating and destructive mindset of what do I want to do next? Or I don't know. I don't know what I want to do next. The more small questions we answer, suddenly we naturally shift from just thinking, I don't know, period, to I'm figuring things out. Or I might not know what I want to do next, but I am learning a lot about myself. I
Mm.
do actually know I'm getting to know myself. I'm getting to know my desires at this point in my life. And so it opens ourselves up from this very like blocking mindset of I don't know,
Yeah.
period.
Yes, absolutely. So, which brings me to a question when you were going through your whole journey, what would you say were some of the small steps that you took in order to finally make that jump and pivot over to coaching?
Yes. The first and most important step for me, and I have to say this actually came to me organically. It's not something I actively sought out. So I'm lucky and grateful it came to me organically. But what I would say is to anyone is you need to seek out examples, positive examples of what's possible for yourself. So for me, I was listening to a podcast, which also came to me organically. So I think someone's in my corner here of coaching practices that were viable. So I was listening to this podcast called The Life Coach School, came to me, I don't know, Spotify recommendation, something like that. And ironically, I actually started listening to it the very first day I hit the desk in investment banking. So essentially what I would do is I would like walk my 20-minute commute through Midtown. I called them two-a-days where I would listen to this podcast twice a day, like as I was going to work and then as I was coming back at like 2 a.m. And
Right.
the podcast was great for me for so many reasons because A of all, it was giving me practical personal development tools that I could apply to my current job to feel less stressed, to feel more fulfilled, to feel more energized despite working 110-hour weeks on the norm. But the other thing that podcast did for me is the host would bring on coaches who had successful coaching businesses. Now, they were all different types of coaching businesses, weight loss coaching, parenting coaching, some career design and development and figuring things out coaching, not even necessarily the type of coach I was, which ended up being specifically to help people feel less stressed
Mhm.
in their day-to-day jobs, but just having positive examples of, wow, these coaches are incredibly successful. They're running a very lean and simple business model. Like a lot of them are solopreneurs. Maybe a few of them have, virtual assistants or vendors they partner with, but it's not like I need to do anything crazy to leave the career I'm in and start something that's helping people, that's making money, that's, putting a service out into the world. And so that's what I'd really say is start with looking for positive examples of what you might like to do next. Some of us have distinct thoughts on what we might like to do next. So go seek out positive examples of people who are in those professions, who are thriving, who are loving what they're doing, so you can learn from them. So you can
Mhm.
hear about their stories, so you can hear about their job, their day to day, how it all works. And if you don't have any ideas, then I would say just get curious and open yourself up to things that are outside of exactly what you're doing right now. And it can be at a smaller scale too, like with you in the cards, it can just be like, I want to start to notice examples or activities in the world where people are using creativity more.
Mhm.
And like, let me notice those, what's possible there. Maybe I strike up a conversation with them and just say like, tell me about your card making hobby. Like, what do you love about it? How do you think about it? How do you feel when you're doing it? Just to start showing yourself positive examples of things you might want.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And when as you're talking about that, the metaphor that's actually coming to mind for me is, how when someone says, "Did you notice that there's a lot of white cars on the road right now?" And all of
Exactly.
a sudden you see all these white cars and you're like, "Wait, they've always been there. You just never paid attention to it." That's exactly what you're saying.
Yes.
It's
Yes.
incredible.
It's so, and I love exactly what you said about then if you buy a white car, you like see white cars everywhere. I mean, that's scientifically how our brain works, right? Is if we prime our brain in a certain way, it suddenly becomes super locked in to finding all the answers to support or finding all the data points that will be helpful in solving that challenge. So going back to first and foremost, shifting from this place of, I don't know what I want to do next, because that instantly shuts us down and it primes
Okay.
our brain from not wanting to solve this problem, right? So we might, interact with 10 people who are doing things that could potentially be interesting to us, but it won't register as that, as like, oh, these are potential sources of information and data to me. So what I'd offer is just shifting. If you're in this place, you're kind of like in the middle, it feels a little painful. You know what you're doing isn't it, but you don't yet know what's going to come next. Instead of reiterating to yourself daily, I don't know what I want right now, just
Mhm.
shift it to I am figuring out. what I want right now. I
Okay.
am on the hunt for information about what I want right now. Because when we shift to that mindset that I'm figuring it out, I'm on the hunt, I'm open to, taking in data points to help me figure this out. That's when we actually start seeing the people around us, the things around us, the activities around us as sources of potential information and data that will help us.
Yeah. 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 And that's, those small shifts will accumulate over time. And before we started recording, we were talking about how doubt eventually gets minimized over time. And that it also comes from past experiences, our history, how we have grown up
Hmm.
in this particular society or your personal experiences, and everything influences how you make decisions today. And one thing that I like to run with clients is changing that mindset of who's making the decisions today versus who were you making the decisions when you first started your job, because I guarantee those two personalities are totally different people. You've already gone
Completely.
through, for you and I, like 15 years of experiences.
Yeah.
That's a whole childhood.
Yeah.
It's a
Seriously.
lot,
Seriously.
right? And yet
Yeah.
we think that we have to pick one job, pick one career, and that's going to be our path for the next 30 years. It
Yeah,
doesn't
and
have
there are phases along the way. There are
to.
different steps that all and that's life. Like life is a process, right?
Mhm.
And so your career trajectory is also a process. It's not about having all the answers up front because life also lifes. And so you can try to control every single aspect of your life and then life's going to throw you something that completely shatters that plan.
Yes.
So, really working with who you are now, like you said, the decisions you made at 22 entering the workforce, you're a completely different person than you are 15 years later. So,
Mhm.
really acknowledging too, it's not even to combat this idea of if I make a different decision suddenly, it means I made a mistake the first time. It means I made the wrong decision the first time. It means like I'm going to be starting over from zero. All these things are not true. You made the decision that was best for you at that time in your life with the brain of who you were at that time. Fast
Mhm.
forward 15 years later, you're a completely different person. You have different priorities, you have different desires, you have different goals for yourself. And so it's so important that we update and we make decisions based on this updated version of ourselves, this updated identity, because the decisions we make based on our values, our vision, our goals, what we want out of life today, those are going to be aligned decisions. Trying to like make a decision that 22-year-old us would have liked, that's going to create misalignment in our life and career today because we're
Mhm.
not that person.
Mhm. Yeah. The word that comes to me is just a large amount of compassion for yourself. Just
Mhm.
noticing you're different and it's okay. And you don't have to make the same types of decisions or even use the same decision model, if you
Right.
will.
Right. And that's a beautiful thing. Like, how wonderful that I'm not the same person I was at 22 years old. That would be weird. How wonderful that I have different desires and different desires and different goals now. And how wonderful that I can choose to think about things differently. Like you said, use different models. My pro con list can look differently today. And like, that's a beautiful thing. That's a positive thing.
Yeah.
Oh,
We
so
talked
good.
about so much today, Amelia. I
Yes.
really appreciate it, from everything from like taking small steps and
Hmm.
how do we manage our doubts and our 15-year switches or
Yeah.
switches. Is there any last thing you want to share with our listeners about going through the journey of career transitioning, especially those who are
Mhm.
stuck in that messy middle and kind of figuring it out?
Yeah. I mean, first and foremost, I just want to say I see you. I see them because, and I want to acknowledge how painful and scary and confusing and doubt filled and frustrating that messy middle process can be. But I think there are two main keys to navigating yourself through that process. The first is believing in yourself. And I don't want that to sound cliche. I want it to translate into something that's like very tangible and direct. It's no matter what, always coming back to the thought that I can figure anything out. And that is the belief, that is sort of the internal narrative that has gotten me through all of my transitions, that has gotten me out of the murky middle, or at least like severely reduced the time that I spent there. Is I don't need to know all of the things. What I do need is to believe in myself that I can figure anything out. So, like, for me, it
Mhm.
was even when I was leaving banking of, okay, what if you leave this incredible salary and this incredible job? What if you don't get clients for a year? Like, what would you do? And I could figure that out, and I could come up with a rough game plan if that happened, right? So that's one thing that gets you through and out of the murky middle, is always coming back to, I can figure things out no matter what. I have my own back. The second thing is what we said, taking bigger and making it smaller. So taking bigger questions like, what do I want to do next? And making them smaller questions, such as, how would I feel if I infuse more creativity in my life? Do I want to do something more creative? Taking like even big steps, quitting your job, to smaller steps. Who are 3 people I could talk to? Who are 3 people who have jobs that seem remotely interesting to me? And let me just like go to coffee with them. And you don't even need to share at that point you're thinking of leaving or you're super dissatisfied in your job. It can simply sound like, tell me about yourself. Tell me about your career. What you do seems really interesting. I'd love to know more about how you got there, what you like about your job. You don't even have to share anything about how you're feeling or how you're thinking right now.
Mm.
It's about taking the bigger and making it smaller, because that's what gets us into action and out of rumination.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you very much, Amelia.
Yes.
I appreciate that. It's been such a wonderful conversation.
So good to chat with you, Gloria. And your work is so needed, guiding people through the process of navigating what's next in their career, of navigating career and life transitions, and especially through the very empathetic, design thinking focused lens. It's exactly what we need in the world.
Thank you. And if somebody was in that mid-senior transition or looking for their next professional development, how might they reach you?
Yeah, so they can definitely go to my website. I will send it to you so that you can put it in the show notes of the podcast. It's amelianoelcoaching.com. And on there, there's a link where they can book a consult with me, or I can even send you the link to put in the show notes that they can book a consult directly. And really, what that is it's just a 50-minute conversation where we're talking about what's going on for them, what their biggest challenges are, their biggest fears, doubts. And I walk them through exactly step by step how we would coach on that. And I can share more information on my one-on-one coaching program with them then too.
And okay, so everyone who's listening, take a look at the show notes so you can book a consult call with Amelia. She's a wonderful executive coach helping these mid to senior women with their professional development and breaking free from the grind.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on today, Gloria. It's so fun.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.
This has been an episode of Your Life Unbounded, a podcast for overthinkers who want to bet on themselves. If you want to stay on top of new episodes, make sure to subscribe to the podcast and follow me on Instagram at Gloria Julian Coaching, where I share tools and insights as the overthinking expert. That's GLORIAJULIEN Coaching. See you next time.